Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I am Peter DeCampo. I am Town Hall's Inside Out neighborhood resident for the U District in Ravenna and the curator for this event. And I should mention, because I hear a few of you came in tonight having received the printed Town Hall catalog, I should mention that this is not the Bias in Medicine event that has been postponed, so apologies if any of you are here expecting that event. On behalf of Town Hall, it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's panel, which is called Living with Conviction. This event is part of Town Hall's Civics series. Our residence events are supported by the Seattle Department of Neighborhoods. Our Inside Out season is supported by the Wyncote Foundation Northwest, KFN Foundation, and the True Brown Foundation. Our Civic series is supported by Boeing, Real Networks Foundation, and KUOW. Our opening speaker tonight, Deborah Espinosa, will present for about 15 minutes, and then we'll be joined by project participants Michael Shoemaker, Brianne Blakey, and Kushina Williams to discuss Deborah's Living with Conviction project. After that, the panel will take your questions. If you have a question, there's going to be a mic right here, at the center of the room. Please keep your questions as concise as possible so that we can get to as many of them as possible. Before I turn things over, I should acknowledge that we are not, in fact, in Town Hall. Our historic First Hill home is closed for a major renovation. Thanks to the over 1,000 supporters from across our community, we've surpassed $22.5 million raised for that project. Town Hall will reopen in late 2018, but while the building is closed, we're still producing a season of events at venues all over Seattle, North and South. I'd also like to thank University Lutheran Church for hosting us tonight. In the next few weeks, Town Hall has events curated by some of my fellow residents, including How the Body Holds Its Stories, curated by resident Jordan Alam, Telling the Stories of the Body Workshop, also curated by Jordan, and History is an Act of the Imagination, curated by resident Shin-Yi Pai. And we have dozens more programs on the calendar. Keep an eye out for upcoming events in your neighborhood and all around town on our website, townhallseattle.org, or pick up a calendar at our membership table. But keep in mind that the events in the printed calendar sometimes get switched for other events like this one. Finally, I'd like to thank the members in our audience tonight. Members are the reason that we're able to offer most of the Town Hall programs for just $5. If you support broad community access to ideas and creativity, please visit the membership table in the lobby and consider becoming a member. And now, please join me in welcoming our opening speaker. We were trying to remember, and somewhere in the 2010 to 2015 range that Deborah and I met in the Amsterdam airport while we were both waiting for a flight to Nairobi. That she said to me, what gear are you carrying? Because she noticed my camera bag. It's like the most photographer of photography introductions possible. Like, what camera are you using? I sort of thought nothing of it at the time. We talked for a few minutes in the airport. This was before I lived in Seattle. So when I moved to Seattle, I was delighted to realize that that chance encounter would end up being someone who also lived here and was doing really amazing and important work. So I was really thrilled to learn about this project that she's going to present tonight. So Deborah Espinosa is the founder of Living with Conviction. She's an attorney and a photographer who combines her legal training and visual storytelling skills to advocate for the rights of the poor and marginalized, both at home and in Africa. She also works to strengthen those rights by providing legal technical assistance to state and national governments, primarily in the Global South. That's basically the coolest bio I will ever read. Please join me in welcoming Debbie to the stage.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Well, gosh, thank you so much, Peter, for the wonderful introduction. I also want to thank Town Hall and all of your sponsors as well. And I want to thank all of you for coming here today to learn about Living with Conviction and our panelists, who you're going to meet in a second. But you first have to hear from me for about 15 minutes. I will try to be brief because they're really who you want to hear from. So, Living with Conviction, sentenced to debt for life in Washington State. I first just want to start out by telling you how I started working on this project. As Peter mentioned, I am an attorney licensed in Washington State. Most of my work is overseas. Because you never know what happens, I maintain my license in the state of Washington, which requires that I attend continuing legal education courses. There's very little related to what I do in these, quote, CLEs. But in 2014, August 2014 actually, I went to an ACLU 1-hour CLE, and it was called Debtors' Prisons. And I thought to myself, there's no debtors' prisons in this country, there's debtors' prisons in Africa. And I can tell you which countries, but not here, so I had to go. And what I learned in 1 hour completely floored me. I was offended to my core, and I've seen a lot of injustice in a lot of countries. And here, in my own backyard, in my own home, in my own community, in the same justice system that I'm a member of, this is taking place. So at that point, given my combined skill set, I was like, I've got to do something about this. Nobody knows about it. I didn't know about it. So basically, I went up to it was ACLU. I went up to ACLU and I said, this is my combined skill set. I need to tell this story. Can we talk? And that was very unlike me because I'm very shy, just for the record. So before we get into too much of this, I really want to explain what are legal financial obligations. And there is a bit of a PowerPoint stuff in here, but there's photos, and I'm going to share a few of the stories. But don't panic if there's too much. Okay, so we're going to talk about legal financial obligations, and that is what the term colloquially is, a debtor's prison. Well, legal financial obligations are the costs, fees, fines, and victim restitution that courts impose at the time of sentencing. So somebody's convicted of a crime. In addition to being likely or usually being sentenced to a certain amount of time in prison, courts also impose a criminal or the debt on people. Well, nobody knows this. We have no idea that this is taking place. But it's part of what is the judgment and sentence, and the lingo is the JNS, right? So the JNS describes everything about the person's conviction. So the costs, fines, fees, and victim restitution, a few examples that are costs that are shifted from the state of Washington to criminal defendants. And there's about 350 of them. So I'm only going to give you an example of a few. One is a DNA collection fee, $100. Every single time, a lot of people go into the system frequently. Every single time they go into the system, they're charged $100, and their DNA is retested and retested. Another one is victim penalty assessment fund. This is also a mandatory one. And this one, $500 for a felony automatically. Another one is, depending on the county, the prosecutor will request that $100 per day for the cost of incarceration are imposed on the defendant. So I don't want to belabor the point, and the red point is in the middle. Is that right, Peter? Yes. So I don't want to scare anybody with this. I've redacted this out, but up here you'll see, I don't know how well you can see it, but it says just felony judgment and sentence. It's 19 pages, so there's a whole lot of information in this. This is what someone who's convicted of a crime has to sign. Here you'll see this particular person was convicted of theft in the 2nd degree. That's the only thing you need to know about this. This is page 7. Again, they have to sign this. At page 7, there's legal financial obligations, and there's a long list, and the court just fills in, and these RCWs is the law. That's the law where it takes place. So this particular person who was convicted of stealing a little bit more than $750 is charged with $200 in court costs, a criminal filing fee. The person also is given $700 for a court-appointed attorney. This person was poor and they needed a public defender. Well, they're charged $700 for that. Now, so public defenders are free, but this is about the costs, supposedly the administrative costs for ensuring that they get them a lawyer. This person also was charged $100. There's the DNA fee. And I don't know if there's more, but the next page up there is the total $1,500. Like I said, this is a 19-page document. We're not going through it all. But I just wanted you to know, oops, I go this way. So that judgment and sentence that we just saw is Julie's. This is Julie. Julie was one of the first people that I interviewed, and basically she said, nobody ever said what's going on with you. This is at the point that she's being convicted. She said, nobody ever said, what's going on with you? I was a single mom, and I had just lost custody of my children. Julie had been diagnosed with bipolar, and they were figuring out her medications. It wasn't right. She walked into a Walmart, filled the basket up with a pot roast and cat litter and all this other stuff, walks out to her car with it, puts it in the trunk, drives home, and goes into her house. She never unpacks the car. Well, it's a small community. Everybody knows Julie. The cops show up and said, what's going on, Julie? And she didn't even remember it being there. She was convicted of a theft in the second degree, charged with $1,500 in LFOs. She missed her court date because she attempted suicide that day. And she said, I want to tell you my story because everybody needs to know that mental health issues are a real factor for people who end up in the criminal justice system. Fast forward to today, this was 2014, it was February 2014, and Julie has been living with her parents. They finally did get her medications under control. She just told me a couple months ago that her parents have been paying off the LFOs, which I'm going to get to. There's more. You haven't learned everything yet about them. But basically, after 4 years, the balance is the same at $1,500. And that's because LFOs accrue interest at a rate of 12%. This is a statutory maximum rate that's allowed, and these accrue from the date of conviction. So Julie was convicted on February 14th, 2014. And those LFOs, the 12% interest accrues while they're sitting in prison with no ability to, oh my gosh. Okay, so repayment, they deduct LFOs if you have a job in prison. You have to make monthly payments. You cannot discharge them in bankruptcy. You cannot defer them for college. Garnishment of wages if you have a job outside of prison. And the failure to make a payment can result in your arrest. And so this is Sabrina. She says $39,000 in LFOs doesn't affect someone who doesn't care. It doesn't affect a junkie shooting up in the basement. But for me, doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing, and then she continues. She failed to pay an LFO living in Spokane. They transported her to Kitsap County. She was in jail for 3 days. She gets out, and they don't transport her back to Spokane. She knows the only person she knows in Spokane is her dealer, in Kitsap County is her former dealer. So this is hard to see, but I have one here. This is one of our panelists. This is the bill that they send, okay? And I just wanted to share with you that every 3 months, every person gets one of these, and it's in triplicate, and this is the invoice. And you have to pay these LFOs monthly, or else risk arrest. And you can't pay a check. You have to go and buy a money order. And you also, what was the other thing? If you want to do a credit card, you have to pay 7% on top of that. So we'll talk a bit more about this. Okay, this is Ricky. He's holding up his money order. Ricky has been on our panel many times, but he says it's like no matter how far you go in life, it'll still be there. So he carries these around, he keeps them in the glove compartment of his car because he was picked up in the International District for owing money to Snohomish County, and he lost his job because he was held in jail. This is a letter that one of my people I interviewed had received the day before. She'd paid off thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And she gets a letter, and she thinks she's done, but you know how interest accrues and all that? It's really hard to pay off. This letter, at the top, it says $200. The Spokane County sent her a letter, and I know it's hard to see, but it says you owe $200. She's literally paid off thousands already, right? And it says, if you do not respond to this notice within 30 days, the clerk's office may require you to appear before the chief criminal judge and show cause as to why you should not be found in violation of your judgment and sentence, to include possible jail time. Now, this woman, is 10 years out of jail, maybe 15. She's paid off over $15,000 somehow. And she says, I got this letter. It was the first thing she said when I came in the door. We have to talk about this letter. I got this letter, and if I wasn't as stable as I am right now, it would have completely, they would have spun me back into my addiction, into using. Because I've just paid the state, and they have the gall to send me this letter and threaten me with jail again. She said, instead of a letter that's like, oh, by the way, you still owe $200. She said, I am not going to pay this $200. I'm going to pay them $1 per month because of this letter. She was that annoyed. Yeah, see, this is Tracy who got that letter. I wanted to point Tracy out because she said, I had a warrant out for my arrest for LFOs that I didn't even know I had. So her public defender had not told her about her LFOs. I lost my children. I lost my Section 8 housing. She also lost her job, a part-time job at the Air Force Base. She says, I was shattered. So I just slipped back into my addiction for the next 7 or 8 years. I didn't know what else to do. This is one of the most egregious examples because she lost custody of her 2 children who were both in elementary school. And these are the consequences of this. People don't have enough money to pay, and yet this is what our state is doing. So that's just a little glimpse of what this project is about. And the main purpose of it is to educate people like yourselves about the personal impacts on people who get out of prison but still are burdened with this crippling debt. Because I believe that it's been allowed to persist because nobody knows about it. Not enough people know about it. If you don't have any contact with the criminal justice system, there's no reason that you would know about it. So that's really the mission. And through that, the reason why I focus on the people and share their stories, and in particular these community conversations, is because we need to have these conversations. We all need to understand what our law and policy is doing to some of the poorest in our state. And so, with that, I am going to introduce, I have the pleasure of, we're behind. So I have the pleasure of introducing, and I wrote it down. Wait, sorry, it's in my pocket. This is Brianne, Kushina, and Michael, and they are here tonight to talk with you. This is really bright light, which is why I'm moving. Usually I make them introduce themselves, so the first time they'll actually have heard their introductions. So first, I'd like to, again, this is a privilege. This has never happened. It's very exciting. So first, I'd love to introduce Michael Shoemaker. Just a few things about Michael. Michael Shoemaker is the first person who trusted me enough to invite me into his home and share his story about what it's like living with conviction. He told me about his LFOs, and of course, he let me photograph him. I didn't know the lingo. There's so much I didn't understand, and he was very patient with me. He explained so many of those acronyms. I still am learning from him. Michael is a son, and he's a father, and he's a grandfather, and he's also the caregiver for his 89-year-old aunt, and he's also a friend. So please join me in welcoming Michael to the stage. He's also a big teddy bear. Sorry, I don't mean to get too mushy. Okay, well, we were not going to be mushy. Okay, next, I get to introduce Kushina Williams. Oops, sorry. I keep moving because the light is right there. So Kushina is the first person who invited me into her home, and at that point, when we were going to do the photo shoot, she says, oh, wait, I want to show you all my photos. So she basically took out stacks and stacks of photos and put them all over her living room, or her living room table. And these were photos of herself in prison, as well as her family members. Kushina is a daughter and a wife, and a mother to 2 sons. But she is also concerned about not just her own family, but she's also concerned about the children of incarcerated parents everywhere. And she's also a friend. So come on up, Kushina. These guys are awesome. Come on up. Sorry, we're being cushy, sorry. Okay, and last but certainly not least is Brianne Blakey. And Brianne was the first person who said to me, he said, "I'm not sure you want to hear my story because you might not like what I have to say." And at that point, I knew that I had to talk to Brianne because that's what I need to hear. I think that's what we all need to hear. And so Brianne is a son and a father of 2 teenage girls. He completely lights up when you ask him about how his daughters are doing. He's also very humble, and he's also very hardworking. So, Brianne, come on up. Thank you, Brianne. You can tell I like these guys, right? Okay, so now what we're going to do, I have a mic, so I have all these. I don't need that. So what we're going to do for a few minutes is that we are going to, I get to ask them a few questions, okay? Okay, so I'm going to ask them a few questions, and then we're going to open it up for questions later, okay? So, and I want to put this back. Hold on. Sorry, one thing, I have to do this real quickly. I want to go back because there's a photo here that is relevant to the first question. Okay, so I think I'm going to ask Kushina first the question. So Kushina, could you please tell us a bit about yourself and also a bit about this photo that I took of you when we first did our interview?
Can you hear me? Yes. So my name is Kushina. A little bit about myself. I've been to prison twice. The first time I did a year. The second time I did 4.5 years. That little boy, well, he's not little anymore. He's 16 by the time he was little. I left him when he was probably about 13 months old, 14 months old. My youngest and my oldest was 7 years old, and I went to prison. But the very first time I went to prison, my youngest son wasn't born. My oldest son was born, and it was so hard for me to leave. I had to literally take him to his dad's house, and I said, "Oh, I'll be back. Mommy, be back. I'm gonna go to the store." And someone I would call home, he was like, "Mom, you still at the store?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm at the store. But it's very hard to be separated from my kids. And then the second time, just leaving, 2 boys, leaving them with my mom. So I had to leave my kids with my mom. My mom had to be the mom. And literally, I'm sitting in prison for 4 years. Did not have a chance to see my youngest son. I didn't see him until I got out. My oldest son would come and visit me through Boy Scouts Behind Bars once a month. And when I was getting ready to come home, so what made me change my whole life is when I was getting ready to come home, my son Dwayne, he came to visit me, and he was like, "You know what, Mom, if you ever come back here, I'll never, see you again. I'll never come up here and visit you again." So that kind of like changed my life, like, okay, yeah, I don't want to do this. But then when I get out, so I'm out, I'm trying to do good, changing my life and everything, and these fines are literally just coming back, haunting me. So I have applied for jobs, which now, I was just telling him, within the last 2 years, it's very hard for me to get a job because my convictions keep coming up. I've been out since 2007, it's 2018. Have not been in trouble, consistently, trying to be productive in the community, doing what I need to do to be a good citizen in the community. But my LFOs is hindering me. I owe over approximately like maybe $50,000 in fines. I have a fine that's literally in collection agency. It went from $6,000 to $29,000 in a fine. I tried to file bankruptcy. That didn't help. And my checks was getting garnished. I went to court, asked the judge, "Hey, can we pull this fine out of collection?" Because my dad was going to just pay the $6,000. And the judge says, well, if you pay consistently for 12 months, I'll think about taking it out of collections. So I looked at him, I said, "So you're saying that you are going to take it out of collections, or are you thinking about it?" He says, "I'll think about it." And I'm just like, okay. And so consistently the fines, they do accrue interest. So with Alliance One Credit, it is, I think it's like $3 a day interest that your fines, they grow interest. So honestly, I'm unemployed right now because of my convictions, and just continuously trying to look for a job, but it's hard for me to even pay any type of fines because unfortunately I have 13 felonies, and all my felonies have fines.
Thank you. And so that's part of it. In addition to the 12%, if one of the counties sends your LFOs to a collection agency, they add additional fees and fines and a percentage rate. So that's one of the reasons why, that's what she's referring to with collection agencies.
And
Okay.
I actually, sorry,
Yeah.
and I actually offered, so, who offers to go to jail? To go, oh, hey, let me turn myself in on the weekends, let me try to get some of my fines reduced, and I was turned down.
Thank you. Okay, and Michael, could you please share, this is Michael's invoice, which is up there, and I know it was difficult to see, but on the day, we did a couple interviews because I was new. And he brought these invoices out, and he brought several out, and I realized when I looked at them, I'm not a math person, but I realized that the payments that he was making, which he'll share with you, were being applied to the interest only, which shocked me, and I was like, geez, is that even good, practices? So Michael, could you share with us a bit about your background and your situation and how it is for you, or how it has been getting these invoices?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Michael. I'm a disabled vet. I've been on a pension that I live on basically below the poverty level. I subsidized my income as a drug dealer. I got caught up in it. It also fed my addictions. I went to prison at a couple different times, actually, and wound up with almost $22,000 worth of fines. The courts never even bothered to check to see what kind of an income or anything else I had. When I walked out the door to go do 5 years in prison, basically my fines doubled. They put 12% interest on $11,000 walking out the door, and every month, or every 3 months, another 12%. And the courts fully well knew that the amount of money that you get while you're working in prison ranges anywhere between 42 cents an hour and $1.10 an hour. Capital Projects pays $1.10. Out of that, there's still cost of incarceration, cost of supervision, your hygiene items, postage, telephone card, and anything else that, just some creature comforts. They take almost 90%. If you owe on child support, if you make $1.10 an hour, you're going to see 10 cents. And so you acquire more of a debt for cost of incarceration because, sure, they'll front you envelopes, they'll front you stamps, they'll front, certain items and stuff like that, but it still comes off the top via the prison system. And it's not, this is like soup and nuts, the difference between the courts and the prison system itself. I was fortunate, I as court ordered, I had to pay on my fines, and the courts decided that, being that my income was very low and it was going to stay that way, they charged me $25 a month on each cause number, and I had 3 of them. I paid from 2009 to 2015, and the only thing it did is increase the interest. Nothing came off the principal, and it got to the point where the interest was higher than what the original fines were. I have tried to do all the things that are right. I'm coming up on 12 years clean. I've become involved in community affairs. I work with a lot of veterans organizations, and I'm also a motorcyclist.
That's good.
Since I met this lady, there's a lot of things that has taken off for me. I had $17,600 and some odd dollars worth of fines and penalties removed by the courts via petition because of hardship. I still have 2 more sitting in collections, and they're about $250,000. They've been there since 1990. The collections agencies won't let go of them. There's no, unless you get a sympathetic judge, there's no way to get them drawn back. And every 10 years, they can go to the court that they got those LFOs from and petition to extend it for another 10 years. And all I have to say is they believe this person will have the potential to pay off those fines. They don't do a check. They don't see if a person is disabled. They don't see if they've been on a limited pension. They don't care. It creates nothing but a debtor's prison. And when it comes to employment, when it comes to even getting Social Security and this sort of thing, what your background is has a large effect. From housing to public services and stuff like that. If you've got a long felony record, it's not good for you. Anyway, I'll pass it back to you, Debbie.
Thank you. So before I ask Brianne a question, I just wanted to mention that the hard part about this is that courts are constitutionally required to inquire about a criminal defendant's ability to pay, and they don't do that. Some are starting to based on new litigation that's been taking place, but it's constitutionally prohibited to incarcerate someone because they just can't pay a monetary debt. So that's kind of the kicker. So Brianne. So Brianne shared with me just recently that he just hit his 36 months out of prison now. So would you share with us a bit how things are going now?
Well, things are going pretty good. My name is Brianne. Thank you for having me. I've been incarcerated twice. The first time was from 2005 to 2007. The second time was from 2010 to 2015. Like Deborah said, when she first interviewed me, I told her that, with my story, there's going to be some things that you're probably not going to want to hear because I had a lot of fire back then, and I was really mad and angry at how the system does things. When I first got out, I was dealing with the program, the post-prison education program, and they were helping me through the process of getting back into school. I ended up going to Seattle Central for my applied science and associate's degree. I'm still working on that. But the system it really made me angry because there are a lot of people that get out that don't have the education that they need. They don't have the proper resources that they need, and it's like they're just cast away. And the courts are trying to cash in on these people from crimes that they did in the past. I mean, granted, everybody is grown, and, a lot of people know right from wrong. We make mistakes, but I don't think that we should be punished for the rest of our lives for, mistakes that we made, especially if we're trying to get our lives back together. We're law-abiding citizens, we're going to school, we're trying to find employment, but every time you turn around, your past is being thrown at you. I've been doing pretty well, exceptionally well, by the graces of God since I've been out from 2015 to now. I've been working as a supervisor at a pizza restaurant, but it's not enough for me to be able to pay rent, afford hygiene, and then also pay the fines that I have in LFOs for DOC. The scary part about this is it's a stressor. And like she had mentioned, if you happen to come from a place where you have an active addiction in something, it's really easy to spiral back into that type of lifestyle because of the stress. And for me, I'm an alcoholic, recovering alcoholic. And a lot of things that I had to deal with DOC upon getting out and trying to be successful and not be incarcerated for a violation was to have to pay these fines. I don't have a CCO that's really on me about that. He tries to be as fair as he can as possible, and I thank God for that. I got blessed. But a lot of people don't have that same opportunity that I have, and I think that's a very tragic thing. But I am really struggling in my LFOs as well. Like I told Deborah in the interview that we had, that I think, the little money that I am paying is not doing anything. And I'm just learning, like the rest of you, how people are paying for their LFOs and it's not doing any type of damage. So I know my little $20 isn't doing anything. So with that being said, I just hope that something changes soon, because it's not fair for us to have to get taken away from our jobs and have to be pulled out of school, and we're sitting in a jail cell for 30 months on to 45 days over something so trivial, something that can be, solved with, a simple solution. So with that being said, thank you.
Thanks, Brianne. Yeah, I also wanted to mention that the weird piece of this is that the legal financial obligations are part of your criminal sentence, and when you don't pay them, you're considered in violation of court order, right? Well, then the flip side is, of course, then we can incarcerate you, but you're not entitled to a lawyer at that point. So when Tracy goes to jail for 58 days, she doesn't get, because it's considered a civil debt. So it's like, which way do you want, which way is it? So that's a bit frustrating. So, so it was only until I spoke with Kushina that she mentioned to me how much that families, she's now out and paying on her own LFOs. But Kushina, what you shared with me that I hadn't heard at that point from anyone else is that as a family member with loved ones inside prison, can you share a bit about what that's like in terms of having to pay LFOs of those loved ones who are inside, how that whole thing works?
Yeah. So I have a husband that's incarcerated. He has 20 years left. So by me trying to take care of my kids and then him as well, and then I have a stepdad that's in prison as well, and he has, I think, like 5 years left. My son just got out. I was taking care of my son, but he just got out 2 weeks ago. So that's one person that I don't have to help.
He got out of prison?
Yeah, my son got out of prison 2 weeks ago. So basically trying to take care of home and trying to take care of my, at this time, take care of my youngest son. I try to make sure that, one, my husband, and at the time my son had, hygiene. So I wasn't able to send a large amount of money. So what I would have to do is send $10 every time I send them money so they can get the full $10. Because when I was in prison, when my dad would send me $100, I would get $10. They'll take $90 of my money. And so I wanted to make sure that they, they have hygiene or food or whatever. And then on top of that, I still have to, make sure that there's money on the phone so I will at least be able to speak with them on the phone. For me, it's really hard to be able to, try to be out here in the world, as they would call it, out here in the world, trying to survive and then trying to help them in the inside survive in there. Because with my son, if you don't have an education, if you don't have your GED or high school diploma, you can't work. You have to go to school. So he didn't have a job. And so I had to make sure that, he was able to have hygiene, because in prison now, they don't give you free soap and deodorant and toothpaste like they did when I was in prison. You'll just be without.
Thank you. Yeah, that was something I had no idea about, that basically people, your loved ones on the outside have to pay for, shaving, toothpaste. I was like, really? I mean, that's just not what, we don't know about that as well. So DOC typically takes up to, or at least 88%. Is it 88%? 90% now? Okay. So they take 90% of whatever money loved ones give their loved ones inside, and that goes to LFOs.
Not all of it.
Not all of it? Okay, see, I'm still learning. Not all of it. Where else does it go?
It goes to cost of incarceration, it goes to TV costs. So mind you, if you're in prison and you don't have a TV, you're still paying for cable, internet, or paying for cable in the institution, even if you don't have a TV. So you're paying for cable, cost of incarceration, cost of living, if you owe for going to the doctor, medical. So if you went to the clinic and you didn't have $5 or $10 and then someone send you money in, they'll take that money from whatever money that your family sends in. And then a little portion of the money that's being sent in will go to your LFOs. Because I questioned that when I got out, because I did not understand why my fines for 4.5, almost 5 years that I was in there, why my fines were not getting paid the way I thought that they were getting paid. You're saying, you're paying my fines, but you're only paying like $2.50, $1 something towards a fine.
Did you want to?
Yeah, the majority of the money really goes back to them. It doesn't go to our fines, really, because it doesn't make any sense for me to owe $1,300 when I go in, and then when I come out, I owe $4,300, and I've had a job for 5 years, so.
Yeah. And if you guys saw the slideshow beforehand, one of the reasons is that our justice system, our court system, is ranked the lowest in the country for actually funding the courts. So we don't have a state income tax. So the primary means of revenue is property taxes. So in communities and in counties that are very poor and also have a very low property values, they're not generating enough income. And so one of the means, we have a question back there?
How is Washington compared to the other 49 states? And when were LFOs first invented?
All the states across the country have some form of LFOs, and the federal system, the federal justice system also does. In the federal system, you are charged $100 flat fee. That's it, $100, zero interest. In other states, it varies greatly. We have about 350 different types of LFOs that courts can use their discretion to assign, but we are one of the states with the highest interest rate. So we don't fare very well. There is a source, and I keep meaning to actually have it with me, Xerox a few pages. I have a chart that has all the different states, but we are, in fact, one of the harshest systems in terms of LFOs, and I do believe it's because of the way that we our funding sources. And so when did this come up? Somebody else has asked that, and I do believe it's in the 1990s, but I'm sorry, I don't know the exact date. It does predate the major sentencing reform that we did in 2000 because people have LFOs going way back, way back. So I'm sorry I don't know the exact, but I need to get that because it's been asked before. Okay, so let's just see. How about, Michael, you have shared your story many times, specifically in order to educate people about LFOs. What is that like for you? Can you share with us why you do that? And I know it's a little bit of a different type of question.
With me, most of the things that we're doing right now, Annette, I've already run the gauntlet. Thank God I don't have the courts hanging over me anymore. I'm just waiting for the time now to actually have my full rights restored. Unfortunately, that began in October of 2016 when I finally paid off my fines. from that point on, I have 10 years to wait before I can petition the court to expunge my records. If I'm lucky, I might get to go deer hunting with my son once before I'm too old. I try to give back to my community. A lot of times, from making the payments over at the local courthouse, they all know me by name. And a lot of the officers that do the security knew me from before. And so they always get a grin on their face and, they're glad to see me for a change rather than, oh no, not again. And I'm kind of happy that I haven't broke out in chrome bracelets since 2009 when they transferred me to work release. I try to run a simple program. I take care of my elders. I try to get involved with veterans and do things for the community. And that's my way of giving back for the years that I poisoned this same community with methamphetamines.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, so the reason I asked you that, Michael, is because I don't know how many times he didn't say it just now, but how many times he said, I don't know why my story matters. That's what you've said so many times, so I thought he might say it, but anyway, it matters. Everyone's story matters because this is the only way we can educate ourselves. So I think we are out of time now. We're just about to turn it over to questions for the audience. But first I wanted to share with you how am I going to say it? A new development that you guys need to know about. And so I'm going to click through very quickly because it's at the end of the slide. I didn't want to tell you guys this until okay. So for the past 4 years, yeah, woo! The wave, woo! And the reason people are clapping, many in the audience already know what has just happened. Literally, I get the chills. At 2 p.m. today, Governor Inslee signed the LFO reform bill, House Bill 1783. This is this is a historic moment in terms of humanizing our criminal justice system more. So the bill does lots of things. Significantly, it removes the interest on non-restitution related LFOs. I didn't explain what the victim restitution is, but what that means is, let's say somebody steals your car and then crashes it, okay? And you hadn't fully insured it to the amount needed. Well, victim restitution means that the defendant is charged with the costs of paying you back times 2, I think it is. So, and that is something, victim restitution is really a piece of LFOs that are prioritized, right? Versus all the court costs and things like that. So everything that's not victim restitution LFOs, they will stop charging the 12% interest, which is huge. So if anybody is going to get convicted, do so after July 1, okay? There's also the courts are no longer going to be able to charge you costs if you're indigent, and the presumption of indigency is if you had a public defender. Now again, remember we said that there is a constitutional requirement by courts to inquire in the ability to pay. Courts have ignored literally that there's a public defender sitting next to them, and therefore the court has already determined that they are indigent. That's irrelevant up to now, even though, it shouldn't have been. So that's awesome. It removes the duplication of DNA fees, which is great. That's good. It requires, so this part, where is this? This constitutional inquiry into defendants' ability to pay. Well, that just means it's always been there. This time, they actually put it in the statute. It used to be just in the case law for lawyer, is like the judge-made law. So it's always been there, but they actually put it in our revised Code of Washington. Significantly, it's not retroactive. So, like, if I get convicted on July 1, they'll never charge interest on me. Now, these guys, as of, I think it's July 1, it's all very, very new still. But these guys, their interest is supposed to stop accruing, but the amount that they owe will not, particularly the interest, will not be waived. Which is like, ouch, you know? So it's a huge victory. And it also requires the 500,000 people that are outside prison with convictions and with LFOs to go into court, to have the nerve and the courage to go into court and file their papers and request that the court remove their interest because it's a manifest hardship. I should ask these guys, you know, how do you guys feel about voluntarily, without a lawyer because you won't get a public defender, how would you feel about going into court right now, unassisted, and asking the court? It's,
I can answer that question.
even though you don't have the, yeah, please do.
At one point in time, I tried to represent myself and file an order petition for reduction of sentence due to financial hardship. And because I was representing myself, they wouldn't accept the paperwork, even though they were broad forms that I got from the court clerk. So basically what it is if you don't have a legal professional representing you, then you're shuffling, you're throwing snowballs into an incinerator. It just don't work.
See, and that really kills me because that's one of the problems with our justice system. And the work that I do in Africa and other, you know, in the global south, there's all this focus on legal empowerment of the poor and teaching people what the law is and how they can actually go in and do that themselves. So this is what is needed for this population in order for them to get the courage to do this. There are not enough lawyers who will work for free to do this. In addition to the 500,000 people or so who are already outside prison, 7,000 to 8,000 people are being released in Washington state every year. You know, when are we going to get to a point where the interest hasn't accrued on those guys, right? Those people, those men and women. So the issue remains highly relevant. You are not supposed to be incarcerated for failure to pay. Is it going to continue based on my understanding of how the courts work and the clerk's offices work? How quickly is the message going to get out, you know, that this law has been passed? And how about, you know, Ricky, who's walking through the International District, and the cops say, hey, you know, come, we're going to haul you back to Snohomish County. You know, is he going to know? I mean, anyway, so the cynic in me, I mean, literally, I could cry about this bill. This is a huge, huge victory for all of us. And I don't want to take away from that. But I also, at the same time, we have a lot more work to do because this debt hangs over people. It affects their credit. It affects their ability to get a house, ability to get a car, get a business loan. I mean, and a job. And a job. I mean, we did also, Governor Inslee has recently signed the ban the box across the entire state. And what that means is, yay, that's another huge one. Yeah.
So can I say something about
Please do.
Even though they do ban the box, I'm speaking for self, even though they do ban the box, they still will use your background. So I applied for Kaiser. I used to work for Kaiser through a temp service. So once I did my time through the temp service, I literally applied for Kaiser directly. I did my interview, I did everything. And once I went through the interview and then they offered me the job, I had to fill out another application. And then it asked you, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And I said, of course, I'm gonna say yes. I called them because I was kind of curious. I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't say, have you ever been convicted of a crime within the last 7 to 10 years? It says, have you ever been convicted of a crime? So I literally called them and said, Well, I want to know, is there a timeline within your convictions? Because yes, I have been convicted of a crime, and it's been way over 7 to 10 years. Oh, and it was like, no, that doesn't matter. Long story short, I did everything needed to do, had a hire day, had 2 orientation dates. And then all of a sudden, I got a letter in the mail and says, oh, unfortunately, we cannot hire you because of your convictions. But if you can pay your fines off and get your record sealed, get your record expunged, then we will hire you. So I have an auntie that's a paralegal in California, and I have been working with her ever since January to try to get my record expunged, but unfortunately, I don't have $50,000 to give to the state of Washington to expunge my record so I can get employed through Kaiser or through anyone else. It's very hard. So the Box, I'm great for it, but there is it is a catch-22 with that too as well.
Yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought it was, but yeah, it raises your hopes, right?
Yeah, what the Box was, because I worked on it quite a bit, along with the LFO. I kind of wish I was down in Olympia today for that signing. With the Box, on most of your job applications, if a person fills it out and checks that box, 99% of the time that application is going to wind up in the garbage can. The employer is going to look at it, see that you're a felon, and in the can it goes. By getting the Box, it gave an equal playing field to everybody to get an interview for a job. Then, after they extend an offer of employment, they can ask to do a background investigation. What the plus side of what's going on with the House bill now is if your crimes do not have anything to do with the job that you're applying for, they can't discriminate. If you're qualified to build a house and you've got a crime, say for drug dealing, they can't discriminate against you. What does drug dealing have to do with the house that you're going to build? So it gives a little glimmer of hope for people who have been sitting in the darkness of incarceration for so long.
Thanks, guys. Okay, so I think yeah, thanks, you guys. We're gonna open it up for questions.
There we go. So yeah, I mean, if people have questions, please come on up. We've got about, I think, 15 minutes left, so please try to keep them as short as possible so we can get through a few. There are people coming, so I'm gonna step aside and
Thanks.
Sounds like you helped work on some of these bills. Who else should we be thanking?
The organization called Civil Survival.
Put the mic up.
The Washington.
Could you put your mic up?
There's a Washington Can. I actually work with Washington Can as well, volunteer and help with some of the bills.
Great. Thank you for your work on those bills.
Thank you.
So I'm a public health student at the University of Washington, and we do talk about the prison industrial complex quite a lot in my classes. So what do you all think that the best thing that public health can do is?
Building inspections. Starting off for one.
A lot of times with the health situation in that their nurse practitioners are about the top of the line that you get. A lot of their dental is just jerk. They don't try to repair it. They just pull them. They'd rather stuff a pair of false teeth in you than anything else. God help you if you got to have anything done surgically, because you're going to wind up in a hospital and handcuffed to the bed while they do whatever, and then they'll send you back to the facility to try to heal up. There's quite a bit of MRSA throughout the system, the prison system on the top of it. that, it's pretty scary.
If I could,
Another-
oh, sorry, go ahead.
In other words, if you get hurt while you're in prison, if you can delay it until you get out to get it fixed, I would advise it.
Well, for myself, I feel like not looking at our financial means of being able to pay for medical. So my jaw got broke. Went to go get braces, and come to find out that the orthodontist told me, "Oh, well, your jaw wasn't fixed correctly. They need to re-break your jaw."
What?
And so I had to either think about getting my jaw re-broke, which going through that pain again, or just dealing with trying to get still get the braces and then try to have my jaw lined up correctly. And so I wasn't gonna, go through that pain of getting my jaw re-broke. And then on top of that, I have like my kids, they need dental work as well. And I'm just not able to afford, having my braces. I have to pay out of my own pocket. My parents is helping me, and then I have my 2 boys that need braces as well. And it's like, of course we have state insurance, but it's like, oh, well, you have to have a score of 17 to be able to have the state pay for it. I'm like, wow, so it's hard. I think they should rethink that.
I just want to add one more thing, too. Another one of the project participants, if he were sitting here, he would tell you that he got MRSA, and it rotted his gums, and he had no teeth for the last 2 years he served his time. And he said they wouldn't give him new teeth because if it's 2 years or less before you get out, you don't get new teeth. And so he said, as they're saying that, they're handing me some potato chips. So he literally doesn't have any teeth. And he said the first time, right when I got out, I went to DSHS and got teeth. He's in his 40s. So anyway, that's what he would say.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So my question is, when you were talking about going in and doing like a petition for your funds with this new bill, what is the typical attorney fees? If they wanted to hire an attorney, what would that cost someone to do?
It just depends on the crime. So, not trying to brag, but when I first, started committing my crimes, the level of crime that I would do, I would have the money to pay for an attorney. So I would pay like either between $5,000 to $10,000 because of my crime that I was committing. But then once I kept getting caught and wasn't able to, do what I was doing to get the money, I had to have an attorney. I had to get a public defender, which the paid attorney was getting me off of a lot of my convictions, a lot of my crimes. But then once I started getting a public defender, I was basically getting all this time. I was screwed.
Yeah, so paying $5,000 to $10,000 is essentially the only way, or the only option that you guys have to get your fines taken.
Yeah, at the moment. And even when you pay that $5,000 to $10,000, sometimes that's just for an attorney to even look at your case, and they can deny you and still keep the money.
Oh, yeah.
There are a couple legal aid organizations who are completely maxed out. Columbia Legal Services has a self-help legal aid clinic where they don't actually represent you, but they'll answer your questions and help you. And then the Northwest Justice Project actually just received additional funding from the state, apparently in reaction to the federal expectations that the federal funding is going to go down. And so they're hiring lots of attorneys, but they're completely maxed out. But they are in multiple places throughout the state, and then the Center for Justice in Spokane. But the person who was handling all the LFOs has left the organization, and they haven't replaced that person. So the demand is so high, and again, this is civil legal aid, which is even more underfunded than criminal legal aid.
Then my next question is, to get your records totally expunged, you have to pay off all of your fees. And then what is the next step to get your rights restored, or is it just all in one?
After you have paid off all your fines, depending on what your felony was, if it was Class C or Class A, B, it could be anywhere between 5 and 10 years from the time that those fines are paid off before you can even apply to have your records expunged.
So even after you pay your funds off, it could still be 5 to 10 years before you could get a job, before they can you can check the no to
Yes,
the background
ma'am.
check or the
And you
conviction.
have to go to every county that you have your convictions out of. So for myself, I would like literally be traveling around the state of Washington to go to each county to say, hey, I paid this fine off, and go in front of your sentencing judge and talk to them about getting your record expunged.
Because our system is decentralized. So if somebody has convictions from multiple counties, they're going to be getting LFO bills from multiple counties and having to pay them all separately. And actually, someone on the project in December finished paying off $18,000, and she doesn't know what to do. It's not like the clerk's office pays attention and sends a letter that says, congratulations, and we're going to take it upon ourselves to file this with the court. So, and she's in Spokane, but there is no legal aid there, or actually her convictions are out of Yakima, and there's no legal aid organization in Yakima who will help her.
Those are my questions. Thank you for speaking today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, hi, thanks very much for coming out tonight. This is obviously a significant victory. I mean, I don't know it obviously the way you guys do, but so I'm curious, and I'm not even sure how much the three of you have had a chance to really kind of, think this through, but I guess my question is sort of, okay, so now what? I mean, is there, where does this go from here in terms of additional legislation, in terms of maybe making sure that all of the courts now actually know about this and know what they're supposed to do and what they're not supposed to do, in terms of perhaps trying to bolster the system that'll enable people in your positions to get some legal assistance to help you with the process? Where do we go from here, do you think?
Unfortunately, none of this is going to be retroactive. There's going to be people still that, like with my particular situation, thank God I wound up getting things dropped. But there's others out there that are still going to continue on plodding, paying their 25 or 30 or 50 or whatever. And those interest rates are going to climb until they went and file a petition to have the interest waived at least. Now, a lot of people don't know that you can actually approach the court clerk or the clerk's office and ask them to reduce your interest. But, when the fines are coming out of your pocket and it's just going on top of the interest and it's not scratching the surface and you still got the principal there, it's heartbreaking. Especially when you try so hard to get away from all of the drugs, the alcohol, the lifestyle that comes along with having a felony. Unfortunately, it seems like only the drug dealers and the people that are strung out on drugs are the ones that want to reach out and give you a hand when you get out of prison. The prison systems themselves have various education classes and this sort of thing, computer tech and this sort of stuff. It's make busy. It holds no weight when you get out into the civil world. I have a degree in building maintenance technology, and that makes me a laborer at the local nail bangers. Yeah, I know what a nail is. I know what a hammer is. What good is that type of education other than just make do during the time? It doesn't help the people, and it gives you a false sense of hope.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm happy that this bill was passed, because anybody that commits a crime going forward, they won't have the interest. But for anybody like myself and these gentlemen here, unfortunately, we still going to have the interest. But I just feel like there's still hope. This is just the beginning of it. There will be another bill that I'm hoping that will be passed to where at least all of our interest can be waived off, and we can just pay the principal, or give us different options to be able to pay the principal of our fines. like I said, I've been out since 2007. I have not committed no crimes and not even thought about committing a crime. Because I could have committed a crime and paid the fines off, but it's like, is it worth it? No.
It was said to me that eventually something's gonna have to give, because you got too many people with too many debts, and it's just gonna be a backlog of things. And I hate to use this analogy, but the Proclamation of Emancipation, you know, when it went through, slavery didn't just end right then and there. It slowly, gradually started to end, and I think that's what's going to happen with this bill. We just got to keep the hope and faith and keep fighting, and hopefully something changes.
Yeah, it's the classic rule of law example where you pass a law and then is it going to be implemented?
Right.
So what's needed is on education on both sides. I don't yet know. I'm involved with both the statewide reentry council as well as part of an LFO consortium that the Minority and Justice Commission out of the state Supreme Court is involved with. And we'll see to what extent there's going to be an effort within the court system on their side. But, you know, the court doesn't have to do anything for these guys. So the cynic in me, when I get real tired, I feel like it's job security for lawyers and judges because they could have retroactively, they could have. The other thing is last year when the bill has been, presented 4 times, and last year in negotiations it was reduced to 4%. And what I had heard from judges and people within the clerk's offices who are the collectors, they said that the computer system, which is from the 1980s, is not capable of having 2 different interest rates. So last year, if it had passed, they didn't know, how are we going to do a 4% and a 12%? So now the question is how are we going to do, we're going to have these guys at 0%, but still sending out those bills for existing and then 0, and I don't know. I don't really know. But the LFO consortium, which is comprised of judges and clerks and lawyers who care a great deal about this, I realize it's a beast. We didn't know, we didn't have a comprehensive list of the LFOs that were being imposed on people throughout the state because the authority for it is state statutes, court rules, state court rules, local court rules. They're all over the place. So you gotta find them all. So anyway, it's a classic rule of, I mentioned that because I've worked with Daryl for many years in Africa on poverty and justice issues is how I say it.
Rule of law issues.
On rule of law issues, so it's a good question.
The rule of thumb is always the devil's in the implementation.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian, and I want to follow up with you on the Emancipation Proclamation. I believe the 13th Amendment still allows slavery if you're incarcerated. I think a lot of people don't know that, so important to read the Constitution. My one question I have is about education. A lot of people don't get their financial education in this country until after they're in debt and paying interest. As I learned once I graduated from college in 2008, and I made my first payment on my student loans, that 90% of it went to interest, right? So it's I got rid of them quickly. My question is there an education system in place to educate people who are gonna have these payments to make about, what is this, how much is it interest, or anything like that in place?
That's a good question.
When I was in prison, they didn't educate us on interest. They really didn't pretty much educate us at all in there, was you're gonna do your time, this is what you're gonna do, you're gonna go to movement, you're gonna go to the gym, you're gonna do this. You have to want to be educated. And so for myself, because I'm giving back to the community and to the women that's in prison. So I'm gonna be speaking with the ladies that are in prison about, this bill and the interest and everything that I'm going through out here in society. So when they come home, they can be expecting the same thing. Don't think you're gonna get out and think that, my fines are paid off. No, you gotta do your research and ask for your receipts, ask for everything before you get out. So when you do get out, then you can say, because unfortunately in Pierce County, you only have, from the time you get out, you have 30 days to pay your fine off, and then it goes to the collection agency. Wow. And so a lot of the women that's in prison are from the Pierce County area. And so I'm going to educate them and let them know this is what you need to do, and you have 30 days. So within that 30-day time span, go to court and try to have your LFOs not go to Alliance 1.
But as far as your question, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I don't have an answer for you, which doesn't help you, but I would definitely like to do the research on that myself and figure that out, because that's definitely something that's important to know. You know, you need to be educated on that type of stuff, or you could find yourself in a mountain of debt that you'll never get out of.
I don't think the system wants us
Well,
to know.
that's why we don't
I
get
don't think it's-
education in public education. I mean,
No, and I
yeah.
understand. I don't think that the Department of Corrections want the inmates in there to know exactly what's going on out here.
course.
The only way that the inmates, or unfortunately inmates, know what's going on in the community is through the outside world. So we're the ones that have to let them know this is what's going on. Because DOC is not going to let them know, oh, okay, yeah, we're only paying $2.50 of your fine and the rest of this is going here. And on top of that, you're still growing interest. And on top of that, oh, mind you, when you do get out, this is what may happen. Like, they're not gonna let you know that. They're gonna send you out there and you're gonna figure it out yourself. And you're gonna figure it out the hard way. You're gonna figure it out either by getting your check garnished like I did, or you're gonna figure it out by being threatened to go to jail, or you're gonna figure it out by, oh, you can't get a job because you did 25 years of your life in prison thinking that you didn't pay all this money off, but no, you didn't. And you just
Didn't even scratch the surface.
And you're still just struggling. It's a struggle.
Yeah. My follow-up question is, I can imagine what a struggle is. 12% seems like an inextinguishable debt when you're coming probably out of prison. I mean, I graduated from college, my interest was 5 to 9%. I had a full-time job, and it was tough to make those payments, full-time professional engineering job. My other question is, how does 12% compare to other states and other countries? Because I know in other countries, interest on debt it has a touch of obscenity in the US, but it's called usury and it's not allowed. How does it compare? I'm just curious.
This is not considered usury. It's actually the statutorily
Yeah.
allowed maximum
I know.
interest rate.
I understand.
And it varies across the states. Some states, 1%, 4%, 6%. I don't think there's any states above 12%. Other countries, it's funny, we did a presentation to a rule of law class at the University of Washington School of Law, comprised of lawyers from other countries, judges from other countries, and they were absolutely mortified that this was happening in the United States. And I talked afterwards with one of the judges and the legal aid lawyers from Kenya and Nigeria, and they said, we do impose fines, but nothing, no interest, nothing like this. They said it was insane. So I don't know across other, I don't have a comparative criminal justice law background, but we're unique in that respect around the world about the harshness, as you know, of our criminal justice system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, we have to stop it there. I know there were a couple more questions, so sorry about having to cut it off, but I'm glad we've been able to have a really good...
We have one more slide.
Okay.
Which I didn't even tell you about. So I'd received feedback, I'm just going to quickly, received feedback that people come away from this, how can we help? So we created a list of things. And the first one, which I think is the most important, is that you open your heart to this community. I should know offhand the exact number of people in Washington State with criminal backgrounds. It's quite high. In the United States, I think it's like 2/3 or something. Anyway, open your heart to this community because they're warm and generous and struggling. And the rest of it, the second one is equally important. And today I got an email from somebody that said, I remembered, I've told 20 people so far about LFOs, so please tell 10 friends about this issue. And also support businesses with second chance friendly hiring policies. They exist, and on the website, I think I've created a list, but we are continually trying to get that list updated. And in your favorite businesses, you can go and say, hey, what's your hiring policy with respect to people with criminal records? I think we should actually have a little sticker that they can put in the window so that you can frequent places, anyway. And then support nonprofit organizations that are helping people on reentry in all the different forms, not just LFOs, but in jobs and housing and mental health and school and everything. The need is great. Please, outside, I've created a sign-up sheet if you'd like to stay in touch with Living with Conviction. To hear more about what we're doing, we're all over the state with photography exhibits and conversations. Please stay informed, and if you're on the list, you'll find out about next year's efforts in terms of the legislature. And I do have to say this, please support Living with Conviction. Living with Conviction has a fiscal sponsor of Blue Earth Alliance, and that means we can accept tax-deductible donations. I'm not very good at requesting that, but there's lots more that needs to be done, both on the photography storytelling side, as well as helping people share their story, but also let's do some of this legal education so people can get into the courts and get rid of their fines.
So in closing, I just want to thank everyone for coming, and I really want to thank you all for sharing your stories and for being involved in this project. I was talking to Debbie earlier, and I said, do you think that this project has contributed to this legislation being passed? I know there's a long way to go, but I also know this legislation was a big step, and Debbie refused to take any credit for this sort of groundswell of attention being paid to this issue, and I know that it's difficult to be able to say the exact impact that this project just has, but if there's anything this project does, it makes me believe in the power of stories, the power of the stories that we tell. So I really want to thank everyone for being here to listen, and I want to thank the four of you for doing this. So
thank you. Thank you. Woo! Look at you guys.